Good morning from the farmhouse. Unfortunately, I have been sick the last few days. In fact, I even missed our farmer's market this last Saturday, which is a pretty big deal for me. But this morning was the first morning I woke up and actually wanted something to eat. I haven't been hungry. So I thought that I would make a beef roast tonight for dinner, which is something my family constantly asks for and wants anyway. So I do a really simple version of beef roast, and I thought that I would show you that today. And then I'm going to show you the sides that we're going to have with it, including the recipe for my husband's Yorkshire puddings, which he makes for me whenever we do this, because that's one of my favorite things to have with roast. So I have got 2 chuck roasts from our own beef, from our own moo cows here at the farm. And because I'm feeding 7, and because we love roast beef leftovers and we like to do the hot roast beef sandwiches, I always make sure to make a little bit extra beef for us so that we can have it throughout the rest of the week. I've got a couple of boys that love to do the hot roast beef sandwiches especially. So I'm going to go ahead and put my chuck roast. You can use any type of roast, but I love the chuck roast because of the bone in and a little bit of fat. It makes for a really tender roast. It's my favorite cut of roast. I'm going to go ahead and put my chuck roast in my great big roasting pan. I'm using granite ware, but you can use whatever you got. And if you don't have a roasting pan, you can use like a 9x13 baking dish. You probably won't be able to fit both of those roasts in there, but you can definitely fit one decent sized roast in there. Okay, and then lay those as flat in the pan as you can, just so the broth can get to them. Okay, and then my secret ingredient is just a package of onion soup mix. That is all the flavoring I need until I go to make my gravy. So just sprinkle the whole 1 package. And whether you're doing 1 roast or 2 roasts, you just need 1 package of onion soup mix. I don't change it based on my quantity. And then we're going to put water about halfway. Okay, I have got my water in my pan. It's probably just a little bit less than halfway filled up this pot, but I have it right up to the tippy top of my beef roast that's laying in the flat in the pan right now. My beef roasts are from frozen. I forgot to mention that. Which will take a little bit longer to cook. So if you're on a time constraint, do them defrosted. But because they're frozen, I want to make sure that I don't fill the water up too far up above them, because as they defrost, that water will seep out of them, that juice will seep out of them, and I don't want to overfill my pan. So I am just a hair below a half with my water, and I am just going to cover this up with my lid. If you're using that 9x13, just use some tin foil. And then I'm going to stick it in the oven. My oven is at 300 degrees because I'm going to slow roast these today. And I've already got my oven racks arranged to fit this great big old roasting pan in here. I will note that it's about 10:30, and so I typically won't do a roast if it's after 10:30. I want to get those roasts in the oven, especially from frozen, by 10:30. Something else to note is that this is our beef. If you're dealing with a little bit tougher cut of meat, maybe like if the grocery store beef is a little bit tougher, you might want to roast it longer. So like I'm putting this in the oven right now at 10:30, and we'll probably eat close to 5 o'clock. And this will probably be ready about 4 o'clock. I could probably have dinner at 4 o'clock. So if you're doing, let's see, that's 10:30 to 5 o'clock, you're talking about 7.5 hours. That's plenty of time. If you're doing grocery store beef, you might need to do closer to 9 or 10 hours roasting. So just note that. But 300 degree oven, I'm putting mine in at 10:30. We're going to eat close to 5 o'clock. Okay, I am checking my roast. It looks awesome. It is 4 o'clock. And just like I said, it is ready to eat. I mean, you can already see where it's separated away from the bone. I mean, it just comes right off. So I'm just going to kind of take these bigger pieces that are sticking out of the water, or the broth, sorry, the juice, and I'm going to flip them over if I can, just to make sure that they don't burn on the one side, and just to make sure that they stay nice and juicy. So yeah, I'm not even gonna flip that one over because it's gonna just come right off and separate. So, and then just make sure that you have enough broth in there to make your gravy. So it is 4:15, and as we saw at about 4 o'clock, our roast is most definitely done. So we're all starving. We didn't have very much lunch because it's hot and we've been working outside. We are gonna go ahead and get dinner on the table. We've been smelling this delicious roast and we are just ready to eat. So I'm gonna get our sides going so that Alan can get his Yorkshire puddings in the oven. I've been cooking this roast at 300 and he has to have it at like 450 or something like that, a very much higher temperature. So we've got to get the roast out and get the Yorkshire pudding, get the oven preheated and the Yorkshire puddings in. But in the meantime, I need to get my potatoes peeled and cut up and getting ready to boil before we do any of that. So let's get our sides going. Alan is making Yorkshire puddings today to go with the roast, and so as promised, we are going to show the recipe that he uses for that. He starts with 200 grams of flour. We just use all-purpose. 200 milliliters of milk. We're using 2%. 4 eggs. Salt. Pinch of salt. And he's going to break the eggs and whisk that all together. Alright, he likes to transfer this into a cup, measuring cup with a spout so that it pours easier into his muffin tins. Okay, so a really important part of the Yorkshire puddings is getting your oil really hot. You want to pour your batter into really, really hot oil. So in each muffin tin compartment, you're going to put 1 tablespoon of oil. We are just using vegetable oil. And then we are going to put this in the oven at 450 degrees. You want to make sure that your oil is very hot when you pour that batter in. You want it to sizzle. So this has only been in the oven maybe 10 minutes, probably not even. And you can see it sizzling as he pours it in there. Definitely hot enough. And filling them up about halfway, because these will puff right up. Okay, so we have baked these Yorkshire puddings at 450 for 15 minutes. And something else to note is you cannot open the oven door before they are done for that 15 minutes. So if you need to check on them, just turn your oven light on and peek at them that way. But if you open the oven door while they're baking, they will fall. So here they are, super pretty, puffed up. How much taller than the pan they are. And because of the way that they cook in the oil, because of the way that they cook in the oil, he does take these out, flips them over, drains out the oil, and puts them in a bowl he has waiting with paper towel on the bottom. So to make the gravy, I pour off most of the broth that the roast has made. I do leave some in there, as you can see in the bottom, and that just helps keep the roast moist. And covering the roast back up while we finish up the sides and make the gravy will also help. So to make the gravy, I've got my broth in here. Make sure that you use a big enough pan so that you've got plenty of room to add your flour and to use your whisk. So I've got my broth in here. You want your burner at a very low heat, about a 2 or 3 is what I use on my stove top. And we are going to add flour for thickening. We're going to add salt and pepper. I do like to let my broth cool just a little bit and not add my flour straight out of the oven. Otherwise, the flour tends to make little balls and dumplings. If that does happen, as long as you cook your gravy long enough and continue to whisk it, those little balls of dumplings will dissipate for the most part. So I like to just sprinkle my flour on top and whisk. I'm going to say that there was probably about 6 cups of broth in there. And then I'm going to say that I probably added the equivalent of probably not quite a cup of flour. We'll say about 3/4 cup of flour. And I just add flour until I start to feel it thicken. You don't want it completely thick, like you don't want it as thick as you want the gravy, because as that flour cooks into there, it will continue to thicken up. Just whisk until either the little balls of dough are gone or almost gone, like you see here. I'm going to go ahead and add salt and pepper. And you're just going to do that to taste. Literally, never put your gravy on the table without tasting it first. Just whisk that in. Got it right the first time. That's a perfect amount of salt and pepper for us. If you do find that you've thickened your gravy too much, or you find that you've added a little bit too much salt, you can thin this out with a little bit of milk. But just know that the more milk you add, the less you're going to have that really full beef gravy flavor in there. So I'm just going to continue to let this cook slowly on about a 2 or 3, and make sure you come back with your whisk or a spoon every so often. Make sure it's not getting too thick, and make sure it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. And there we have the complete dinner. Mashed potatoes and gravy, the roast beef, the gravy, Yorkshire pudding, and some garden green beans. That's what we call dinner.